I'm on a mission like a couple spies, and that, guys, is the reason why I catechize the good.
Welcome to the Reformed Standard. I'm Tony. Let's get started. Question 12 of the Westminster Larger Catechism reads, what are the decrees of God? And the answer is, God's decrees are the wise, free, and holy acts of the counsel of his will, whereby from all eternity he hath for his own glory unchangeably foreordained whatsoever comes to pass in time, especially concerning angels and men. Now, we're coming off a brief excursus looking at the Nicene Creed, so if you are just getting started with us, make sure you go back and listen to questions 1 through 11 of the Catechism. The Catechism is a system of doctrine, and it builds on itself. So everything that we've said through the first 11 questions is important to understand in order to understand this one. So what this is talking about is what theologians call the decrees of God. Now, when a ruler makes a decree, when a king or a president executes an executive order, there is fallibility in that, right? He's relying on other agents to execute his will. He's relying on his own power, perhaps his own personal charisma or his personal ability to enforce that executive power or the power of law. But God is not so. So the decrees of man at times are not only fallible in that they may not come to pass, but they're fallible in that at times they're the wrong decrees. And so here what we see is there's a distinction, an implicit distinction between what we understand as the decrees of man and God's decrees, which are necessarily wise, free, and holy. And they're not just wise, free, and holy, but they're the acts of his counsel, the counsel of his will. So again, when a president decrees something, that's not necessarily going to bring about the action. Those are separate things. But for God, his decrees are effectual. They actually accomplish that which he decrees. And the question here goes on to comment that these decrees happen from all eternity. So these are not temporal decrees. So when we talk about the different decrees of God or the logical order of the decrees, when we talk about the debate between infra and supralapsarianism, we might talk about the covenant of redemption and how that plays into the order of salvation in eternity past. What we're doing is we're making what's called a notional distinction. Although the decrees here are spoken of as plural, we should understand this as simply the way that God executes his will, which originates in eternity and carries through into time. And he does this for his own glory, right? We're echoing language from Ephesians 1 and 2, which talk about how he predestined angels by implication for election or salvation according to the counsel of his will. So this isn't something that happens outside of his will. He's not looking down the corridors of time and making the best of creaturely freedom, right? We're not Molinists. He's not looking forward in time and choosing those who he knows would choose them. We're not Arminians or Pelagians. Instead, he's looking internal. He's looking at his own nature. He's looking at his own will. And he's ordaining things to flow out and to be executed in time in a way that is in accord with and is consistent with that will and nature. And finally, it says here that he foreordains whatsoever comes to pass in time, especially concerning angels and men. And so there's a certain sense which we have to recognize that, of course, God's decrees are not restricted to what happens to angels and men, right? It's not as though the hurricanes and the earthquakes happen outside of God's will, but the movement and acts and lives of men and angels, that's controlled by God. Of course, everything is controlled by God, and in a certain sense, it's controlled by God and decreed and determined by God in the exact same way. However, when we speak of the decrees of God, we're usually referring to decrees that relate to men particularly, to humans in particular, and angels as well. So what we should take away from this as we go on with our day, as we move on to the next question, is that God has set his sights, he set his eyes and his heart and his intentions on man particularly. He has made us, and we are the apple of his eye. We are the locus of his favor. And that's a unique blessing that we share in a certain sense with the angels, but not completely, not 100%, because we are the only thing in all of creation that's made in his image. And so it is man that his decrees center around. And that is a great blessing indeed.
Do you know, if you want, you could know this? The Catechism, hey, the Catechism, hey. Do you know what the chief end of man is? And how the Father, Son, and Spirit do manage? Do you know, if you want, you could know this?
West Side.